things I've always found fascinating with royal stories and royal history is exactly how things have changed over the years. And by that I mean, there's certain things that were allowed then, but certainly wouldn't be allowed now. And more importantly, the more outrageous things that we look at. When you think back, say, for instance, to the late 1940s, Danny Kaye, a Hollywood star who came to London for a stint at the London Palladium, became a firm favourite with the young princesses Margaret and Elizabeth. In fact, so much so, they went to see him on official times and then unofficial times at the London Palladium. Also, he was invited out to Windsor Castle. But it's hard to imagine because really, he was considered a little bit risque, not exactly sort of the flatlining sort of performer that you might think. Which brings me to this particular story that I wanted to share with you today. You see, when you think about it, as I mentioned the other day, Queen Mary and King George were shocked and outraged and blushing when Vesta Tilley, the male impersonator, came on stage at the first Royal Command performance and shocked everybody to the point that the audience didn't really know what to do. One lady who continued to shock audiences literally for decades, long before Madonna even thought about it, was none other than the brilliant performer Mae West. And Mae, let me explain. Morning, chums. Thank you so much. I'll have a better way than that. How are you today in this glorious sunshine? I'm all right, thank you, as ever. Lovely to have your company. It is funny, isn't it? Because for my generation, I remember watching Madonna on early MTV and things like that. And the things she was saying and doing, you think, wow, it's so shocking. And then as you get older, you realise that actually she's borrowing a lot from the 1940s, 50s and 60s. That was, of course, the brilliant superstar actress, playwright, whatever you want to call it, Mae West. Boy, did she know how to make a product and how to sell something. You see, by the time Mae hit stardom, she was well into her 30s, but of course, shaved off a good 10 years. Nothing wrong with that, right, girls? And of course, she made a massive amount of money saving Paramount Studios. By the mid-1940s, she was touring in her own plays once again, Diamond Lil, very successfully. She eventually came to London via the Queen Mary and, famously was interviewed on the deck and all of that sort of stuff. And she was starring at the Prince of Wales Theatre, a wonderful theatre that had only really been opened a decade earlier, so was seen as very modern. And Mae was very keen to be seen as part of the new modern fraternity in every single decade. Now, what happened was, first and foremost, it was suggested that Mae could possibly appear in the Royal Variety Royal Command performance. Well, that was shot down. Oh, no. Mae was going to be far too salacious and outrageous and, too shocking, really, too overtly sexual to appear in front of the royals. Ridiculous when you think, because, of course, at that point, they're engaged, they've just married, they're very young. I don't think anything would have shocked the Queen or indeed the young Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, do you? But this is how, the world works in that particular period. Then what happened was, apparently Prince Philip said, he wouldn't mind going to see Mae West. Now, normally when that would be arranged, the royal box would be sealed off and everything, but they couldn't do that because they didn't want the public to know that, in fact, he'd been to see this rather shocking performer. I mean, it's just madness, isn't it, when you think? So what happened next was, according to excellent sources, Mae West did in fact perform in front of the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, but it was all kept under wraps. There was no publicity, and although there was a meeting, it didn't actually in the end take place, simply because they couldn't let people see that Prince Philip was in the theatre or indeed in the corridor, and apparently Mae was taking too long getting changed behind the scenes. Now, this is the fascinating thing, right, what I find about the characters and the people and the publicity that these people do. Fast forward to the 1960s, and Mae is, shall we say, struggling a bit to keep in with the times. Now, what happened was she'd heard that she was going to be featured on the front cover of the now famous Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album by the Beatles, this experimental, album. So Mae, making sure that she got in there first, decided that she was going to, put out a new album, Way Out West, right? And in that, she was going to include an original Lennon and McCartney song, Day Tripper. Plus, she did her own unique version of Twist and Shout, another cover version by the Beatles. Now, apparently, May was very keen on the Beatles up until a certain point. So much so that she was hopeful that somebody might want to play the harmonica or something on one of the tracks. What actually turned May off originally wasn't exactly what you think. Now, fast forward, this is in June 1966. The album goes out and doesn't exactly do sterling business, but nonetheless, curios are interested once again in rediscovering the icon that is May. Now, what happens a year later, and remember, May thinks that she's going to be on the front cover. I don't know whether she believed with the Beatles, but according to a good Hollywood chum of mine, Robert Vaughan, apparently she did think it was her and the Beatles for some reason. And then was stunned to find that it was a montage, right? I mean, just beyond stunned. Thought, well, hang on, it's me sort of thing. Why would you want to be amongst others? Initially, May wasn't too keen on allowing her image to be used on the album, but was very much persuaded. And then in the end, they said this will be very good. It's bringing you to a younger audience. But when she figured where she was and how obliterated she was and you couldn't really see her, she basically let it be known that she, well, not too much of a fan of the Beatles anymore, simply because, of course, well, you know, they hadn't treated the Queen right. After all, sending back their awards, that didn't necessarily resonate with her, huge fan of the British monarchy. The true story was when the Beatles went over to Hollywood, they asked which blonde sex symbol that, you know, would they like to meet. And down at the famous Whiskey A Go-Go Club was none other than Jayne Mansfield. This got back to May, and May apparently was, well, shall we say, regretful of recording Day Tripper by the Beatles, and even more so, furious by the fact that she wasn't the star attraction on this now very famous and iconic album cover. It's always funny to find these things out about celebrities and their egos. Anybody else agree? Neil Sean in the very heart of London.